Welcome back to the Woodward Sports Network. If you're watching it on YouTube, hit that subscribe button and hit the like button as well. Ryan Ermanni, Tom Masway, Braylon is out today. Kool-Aid, Pete Spivak with us, and so is the great Dave Birkett.
Oh, I miss Dave.
Lions beat writer for the Detroit Free Press, joining us on the phone. Dave, how are you, my friend?
Doing well, man. How are you?
I'm doing great. We'll hit you with the news of the day. First, your reaction to the announcement that Ben Johnson is staying in Detroit.
Surprised, definitely. I mean, look, Ben did this before, and I guess, you parse Dan Campbell's comments yesterday that, when he said if we lose him, when I think just about everyone at the time thought that, Ben was headed to Washington. Maybe we shouldn't have been quite as surprised, but the reality is, Ben was a hot candidate, and rightfully so, brilliant offensive mind, and it's a win for the Lions to keep him as offensive coordinator this year.
And Dave,
one more year.
Yeah, no doubt. And Dave, we don't know what's going to happen with Seattle or Washington. I mean, maybe Aaron Glenn gets one of those jobs, but it appears right now that this Lions coaching staff will run it back next year. How important is that to this organization?
Yeah, and there's still some possibilities. I mean, Antoine Randall is up for the offensive coordinator job with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. There's always some things that pop up, but there's no doubt. You look at what happened with the Philadelphia Eagles this year and the lack of continuity that had, and maybe how that contributed to their demise. There's no doubt that that's an important thing for this Lions team, for them to get back to the NFC Championship game or beyond, to have this staff back together.
Talking to Dave Birkett, Lions beat writer for the Detroit Free Press. Subscribe to the Detroit Free Press if you have not done so. A lot of quality journalism, a lot of quality local journalism with that publication. Dave, let me say this too. Obviously, Ben Johnson will come back with some sort of hefty raise, I would assume. At what point does Sheila and Rod Wood give Dan Campbell's representative a call? I believe he's making $4 million a year, and at least raise his salary up to, somewhere middle of the road, maybe even double his salary compared to what some of these coaches are getting in the NFL. Certainly some college coaches out there. At what point do they sign him to an extension and give him a significant raise? And how important would that be?
Yeah, look, I don't know exactly what Dan's making. I think it's probably, more than that as things stand right now. But 100%, both he and Brad Holmes are in line for, significant contract extensions, raises this offseason. I'd be stunned if that didn't happen at some point. It's just kind of how the business is. I think they'll probably looking at both of them having simultaneous 5-year deals or something like that that will be announced late this offseason.
Hey, Dave, welcome in. Miss you, man. It's always good to see you at Ford Field. I'll tell you, man, had the Packers finished off the 49ers, I just want to go back a little, and that Lions would have had that home game, I just think it would have made a world of a difference. Never mind they're playing a different team at all, but I don't know, man. That game against the 49ers, it was right there, as we all know. We all have our different opinions on what the hell happened, on what he calls and what he doesn't call. But he went with the odds. He went with his better players over the kicker that doesn't kick very well from distance. I just want to get your opinion on what transpired in that game.
You talking about the championship game this past weekend?
Yes.
Yeah, look, I mean, I don't have as big a problem as some people with the lack of field goals. I thought he should have kicked the second one when you had a chance to tie the game. The first one, look, you had a really dominant first half. 49ers are coming off a field goal. I think you still think you can stick it to them. It wasn't the best throw, but Josh Reynolds did drop it. The problem, I guess, the play call I had a bigger issue with was that 3rd and goal run where they ended up getting stopped and taking a timeout. But, Maz, I'll tell you, going back and watching the replay of that, Jamison Williams missed a block on that. Otherwise, that's a touchdown.
Yep.
So, look, Dan, there's a roll the dice kind of guy. It's a big part of the Lions' identity and why they've been so good. And, I wouldn't expect anything different from him in those situations. Like I said, I think I would have kicked the field goal in the second one, but I think it was more than just those decisions. It was the magnitude of every single mistake that they had and the compilation of those, the drop passes, the the touchback that wasn't the dropped interceptions. There were so many mistakes that the Lions made in that second half.
The Ayuk helmet catch. That was a kill.
Yeah, look, you can go through a laundry list of things. Like Dan said yesterday, there's typically when disaster strikes, like there's so many of these things that happen, and that's exactly what happened to the Lions. They all just piled up at the wrong time.
All right, I'm not going to look back anymore, Dave. I'm going to look forward. Who do you
it's
think?
It's okay, man. As a Lions fan, you're allowed for a while.
I know, man. And you know what? I don't hide it. I am. I'm as big a fan as there is out there. And I just want to ask you, in your humble opinion, who's coming back here, and who do you think is leaving?
In terms of players?
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, the vast majority of the team's key players are under contract. Certainly they have some decisions to make. Josh Reynolds, Jonah Jackson, Graham Glasgow, C.J. Gardner-Johnson on defense, I guess, are some of the key ones there. I would think the Lions bring one of those offensive linemen back, and if I had to guess, I'd say it's probably Graham Glasgow at this point. Jonah's going to cost a little bit more. He's a little younger in his career. Maybe he wants the payday. Graham is maybe a little more versatile. So I would think he'd be a good one to bring back. I don't know defensively what, if anything, the Lions are, or who, if anyone, the Lions are going to bring back. Romeo Okwara is a free agent too. Dan sort of made an interesting comment yesterday about the need to recognize that as loyal as you are to some of these players, that at some point it is the right time to move on. And so I don't know. I certainly don't think that was directed at anyone in particular, but when you take into account some of the Lions' needs, maybe adding another cornerback this offseason, what they can do in the draft, even though they don't have the same capital, I think they make some moves to try and bolster that defense, get some more playmakers on that side of the ball.
Well, let me ask you if this quote was directed towards anybody, Dave. I'm going to read it for you. I played it twice, seeing if we could get any sort of feeling one way or the other. Dan Campbell said yesterday, there is no level of talent that's worth bringing in here if it doesn't fit in that locker room. Do you think he was talking about anybody currently on the roster, or do you think that was just in general?
No, I don't. And, sometimes Dan certainly can say some things that, you can read into it about who it's being directed at. But I think Dan was just talking about when you get this close, a lot of people say, hey, you're one player away, right? And so maybe you look at what's out there in the offseason and you figure out if you go sign this defensive tackle or this pass rusher or this cornerback, all of a sudden that's the piece that's going to put you over the top. And, I think part of Dan's message was that's not always the case, because what the Lions had this year, and I think we all saw it was pretty special. Like it was, what they had in the locker room. Guys said it was the tightest locker room they've ever been around. What they were able to sort of build, what it meant to the fans, and how that sort of dragged everyone along with it. That's why this season had a little bit of a magical feel to it, and that's frankly why I thought they were going to beat the 49ers last week.
Me too.
And so I think the point was just, this is not like a fill in the blank with anyone at that position that you think is a good player sort of deal. That's not how you get over the top. I think that was really what Dan's message was more than anything.
Hey, Dave, I want to ask you about a couple of free agents here. Do you think they do have some cap space? They don't kick a lot of field goals. It is in Dan Campbell's nature to go for it a lot on fourth down. Yep. So field goal kickers are minimized. But when you need them, you have to be able to count on them. Do you think this team goes out and signs one of the top free agent kickers out there and spends a good portion of money on that position?
Brian, I got to be honest. I don't know who the free agents are this year.
I think Kai Fairbairn for the Texans is up. The Saints kicker Will Lutz, who kicked in New Orleans, I believe, for a long time. I don't know what those guys command, but they got to get somebody in here that they can at least count on, don't they?
Yeah, look, it's such a slippery slope because you look at Jake Moody, right? He was the best kicker in the draft, and the
Correct.
49ers took him in the third round. And, he missed a kick the other day. He missed a game winner from, 40 yards or so earlier this season. Like, especially when they're young, there's no guarantee. And, the Lions need to upgrade that position. I'm with you. I mean, it's as much as Dan wants to depend on or loves to go for some of those fourth downs. And I'm all for that. I think that's the right move in most of those cases. You need someone that the game is on the line, that you can trust to hit a 48-yarder, that you don't hesitate to put out there, rain, snow, indoors, outdoors, whatever it is. And the Lions haven't had that for a few years. And so I don't really know what the right solution is, because, none of those names jumps out as like, you got to sign this guy. Fairbairn's a good kicker, but, I don't know that he's not all pro caliber necessarily. So, I don't know that that's the move. Maybe it is, but and to roll the dice on a draft pick, you're probably still looking at some ups and downs with that rookie, no matter how good he is or how good a prospect he is.
I mean, the Cowboys, it took them a while, but they found themselves a kicker, and they found him in the other league. Aubrey didn't miss all year until he missed an extra point against the Packers, which didn't matter. The Packers were blowing him out anyway, but they're out there. You just got to get lucky and find one. Let's face it, this place has been the greatest place for kickers up till this last 3 years.
Yeah.
So they got to upgrade that position. That's all. There's nothing.
And you take them for granted when you have an Eddie Murray, Jason Hansen, and Matt Prater back to back.
Hell yeah, man. Hell yeah. But I wanted to ask you about not only this rookie class, which was the most amazing rookie class in Lions history. Every single player on that team put out and got this team to where they were. What's your take going forward now on Jamison Williams, who really has impressed me the last month of the year?
He did play a bigger role, and there's definitely something to dream on there. I mean, the speed, we saw it on not just the end around, but the way that when he runs a 9 route and sort of takes the top off the defense, how they have to respect that and what that means for some of the receivers underneath him, opening up the posts and the slants and some of those routes. So you can clearly see the vision the Lions had in trading up for him, and let's give him credit for how far he's come, because the hands, there were a lot of issues, there were a lot of questions about him, the maturity at the beginning of the year, and the fact that he's I don't recall any drops here of late. Maybe he did have one the other week, but I think he played better across the board. Now that said, he missed that block the other day. I think he got turned around on one of those routes. So I don't know that he's still a work in progress, and I don't expect him to all of a sudden vault up into Amon-Ra St. Brown status as one of the best receivers in the league next year. But you can see the vision, and I do think he's going to be a valuable part of this offense.
So in hindsight, Dave, was he a reach at that pick?
Yeah, not a reach, because obviously, that's about where people thought he was coming off the board. It was a good receiver class, and but ultimately, when we look back on that draft, and Kyle Hamilton was there just for one, right? And he's an all-pro safety. Yep. Maybe it wasn't the right, or won't turn out to be the right move. But again, you can see the vision exactly what Brad saw in drafting him, the talent, and in what the coaching staff saw on how to deploy him. The way they've used him late in the season.
Dave, last one for you. I don't think there's any doubt in anybody's mind that Jared Goff is the quarterback of this team. What do you think is a fair extension for him? One that rewards him at the same time doesn't tie the hands of the Detroit Lions organization behind their back for any particular sort of time?
Yeah, that's a tricky question, because fair to me is market value. I'm on the player side on this, and I'm not taking a discount if I'm Jared Goff or anyone. So
for it, 50.
The fairness comes in the structure of it, I guess, right? That maybe you can lessen the cap hit, especially in the first couple of years of it, and certainly players are willing to do that. It doesn't matter as long as they get their money. I would think Jared Goff's going to be somewhere in the $50 million range.
4 years, $50 million per. Do you think that's fair?
Yeah, because he still has 1 year left, so they're probably looking at something like that. And this year won't go off the books if they get this done before the season. So they can lower the cap hit this year, even though it's not not anything that's huge. You know, he can get a pretty sizable signing bonus or an option bonus if they need to spread the actual cash payments out. That's what would be fair for the Lions. But when you look at how quarterback salaries have skyrocketed, you know, he's probably not going to top Patrick Mahomes or Joe Burrow, but you know, I think somewhere in that $50 million a year range is probably right. The guy just led the franchise to the NFC Championship game and, you know, played 3, you know, turnover-free games. So there's a lot to like about what he did.
I'd absolutely pay him 4 years, $200 million.
You would, huh?
Absolutely.
Can he do what Brock Purdy did?
Yes.
Really? He could run out of the pocket?
He can lead his team to a Super Bowl and win it. He almost did.
Yeah. It's funny how that narrative has changed. And look, I'm as guilty as anyone. You know, I sort of bought into what you heard about him coming out of L.A. and you know, wondered. And look, frankly, you know, there were plenty of people in the Lions organization that didn't have a clue what he was going to be. So let's not pretend like they all thought that this guy was coming here and leading them to a Super Bowl in year 3. They were maybe a little more hopeful than others, but there was a lot of doubt, and Jared has, you know, silenced all of those doubters. He's answered a lot of questions, and, you know, he's coming off a really good year, and that doesn't mean that he's, you know, in Patrick Mahomes' class, right? Mahomes is just amazing taking that team. I mean, I know they're a really good defense, but getting to another Super Bowl. But you're right. I think, you know, you walk away from this season saying, you know, we can get to the promised land with Jared Goff as our quarterback if you're a Lions fan or if you're running that team.
So Hendon Hooker is the backup next year, flat out?
I think so. You know, I asked Teddy Bridgewater yesterday, you know, locker clean out if it's funny when I wrote that story about him, you know, him retiring after the season.
Yep.
And, you know, I was talking with him by his locker, and I said, "Is there anything that could get you to stay?" And Hendon was standing right next to him, and he looked over and he was like, "If we get close, man, if we get a taste of it." And so I said to Teddy yesterday, I said, "Kind of getting close. You got a taste of it. Does that change your mind?" And he just shook his head. He said, "Nah." So,
that's great.
Dave, are they back there next year, Dave? In your opinion?
Say that one more time.
Are they back in the NFC Championship game next year?
Man, that's a tough ask. I mean, I wouldn't put it against them, especially with everything coming back, Ben Johnson coming back. But, you know, like Dan said, it's not going to be easy. The Packers are going to be better. The division's going to be better. The 49ers will still be there. So, man, that's a tough thing to predict right now. But I wouldn't put it past the Lions to be back in the mix for that thing again.
So great.
Hey, I wrote O'Hara at halftime. I wrote him a note. I texted O'Hara a note. I'm like, "This one's for you, Mo. This one's for you."
So
After
it's your
all
fault.
Yeah, so it's my fault, man. It really is. It's my fault.
Yeah, well, you know, I think we all sort of thought that in the press box, as dominant as they looked. You know, Carlos Monarez, my colleague, was sitting next to me, and I think I probably said, "Holy, you know, they're going to Super Bowl, huh?" Like, you booked the flight, right? So it was, you know, that's the biggest gut punch of it, is that for 30 minutes they just dominated the team.
Oh.
And I'll tell you what, I said something to Graham Glasgow yesterday, and he said, you know, he'll get over this at some point, but he said, you know, the next 2 weeks, like when you watch a team that we beat in week one of the regular season playing a team that we should have beat in the NFC Championship game, it's gonna burn them pretty good.
You're not kidding.
Yeah, this one's gonna hurt for a long time. This one's gonna hurt until they win the Super Bowl because of how you know. I said this yesterday, Dave. I would be able to handle it a lot better if you go to San Francisco and they just beat you. They were the better team. Everybody knew they were the better team, and they just got it done on the field. But this one just stings, man.
It does.
Because you blew it. I mean, there's no other way. They blew it. One of 10 things doesn't go against them, but hey, what are you going to do?
Both the Packers and the Lions,
they're winning it next year.
They were the better team against the Niners,
the
and they lost.
Lions are winning the Super Bowl next year. I'm just saying that they're winning the Super Bowl next year. Dave, by the way, just some real time chatter from our chat here on YouTube. For the $25 million, that's what they're willing to pay Goff. This is what we're dealing with.
They're going to lower them.
$25 million
for half a season. I think is what he's talking about. If you are Jared Goff, why would you take that? Right. If you're Jared Goff's representative, you don't take anything like that.
No. Oh my
God. Look, you got a good thing going, right? We just talked about
do.
how far they went, whether we think they can get there next year. Part of that is Jared Goff.
Yes.
So you gotta make sure that you keep that.
Kirk Cousins
love it.
wants $90 million guaranteed for 2 years
Yeah.
to stay with Minnesota.
Unbelievable.